201 feet underground, in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, there's a 15-story apartment building. It has a swimming pool with a water slide, a movie theater, a rock climbing wall, and its own hydroponic farm. And it's built inside a Cold War missile silo, with 9.5-foot thick concrete walls originally engineered to survive a direct nuclear strike. People actually live there. Others just visit occasionally, ready to move in the moment the world outside stops feeling safe. This isn't a movie set. It's a real building with real residents. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly what it costs to get in, what billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg are quietly building for themselves right now, and, maybe more importantly, what any of this actually has to do with a normal person building a small, resilient home of their own. Stick around, because near the end, there's a genuinely surprising twist. An entire country where this isn't a rich person's hobby, it's the law. Before we head underground, hit subscribe and tap the bell, because we cover real, unusual home builds like this every week, and you don't want to miss what's next. Alright, let's go find out what it actually takes to survive the end of the world. Before we get into specific buildings, it's worth being precise about what we're actually talking about, because end of the world covers a lot of very different scenarios, and serious builders in this space designed for very specific ones. There's the nuclear and EMP scenario, a structure built to withstand blast pressure, radiation, and the kind of electromagnetic pulse that could fry ordinary electronics. There's the natural disaster scenario, engineered to survive hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires, or extreme flooding. There's the pandemic or societal collapse scenario, less about the physical structure surviving, and more about the people inside being able to stay fully self-sufficient for months or years without outside supply chains. And there's a simpler, more personal version that's quietly become mainstream. Just wanting a home resilient enough to keep your family safe and comfortable through a bad winter storm, a multi-week power outage, or a regional emergency, without needing to evacuate. Almost every home we're about to look at blends a few of these categories together. And the price tag, unsurprisingly, scales enormously depending on exactly which threats you're actually building against. Let's go back to that Kansas bunker from the hook, because the real story behind it is more interesting than the swimming pool. In 2008, an engineer and software developer named Larry Hall bought a decommissioned Atlas F missile silo near Concordia, Kansas for $300,000. The structure had originally been built in 1960 to house and protect an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of launching through walls of epoxy-hardened concrete, nearly 9.5 feet thick, meaning it was already engineered by the U.S. military to survive a direct nuclear shock wave. Hall spent roughly $20 million converting it into what he now calls the Survival Condo. 15 stories built straight down into the earth, 201 feet from the surface to the bottom floor. The amenities are genuinely startling for something built inside a missile silo. A swimming pool with a water slide, a rock climbing wall, a movie theater, a library, a full gym and sauna, a medical facility, a classroom, an indoor shooting range, and hydroponic and aquaculture systems growing real food on site. Structurally, it's built with 5 redundant air filtration systems rated for nuclear, biological, and chemical threats, a minimum 75,000-gallon redundant water reserve, and enough stored food to sustain up to 75 people for as long as 5 years without any outside resupply. None of it is cheap. Units have sold from around $1.3 million for a half floor up to several million for a full floor, plus monthly condo fees in the $2,500 to $5,000 range covering water, electricity, and internet. And traditional banks generally won't finance a purchase like this, so buyers typically pay cash. Hall has said interest exploded after the COVID-19 pandemic, to the point that both of his original silo developments sold out, and he's now developing a second site nearby with unit prices reportedly starting in the tens of millions. Survival Condo isn't alone. There's now a genuine, competitive industry building underground shelters for people who can afford them, and it's grown dramatically over the past few years. Vivos, one of the largest names in the space, operates several very different projects. Vivos X Point, tucked into South Dakota's Black Hills, is built on a former U.S. Army ammunition depot from the Second World War. Hundreds of individual reinforced concrete bunkers spread across the landscape, designed to shelter up to 5,000 people, making it, by the company's own description, the largest survival community on Earth. On the luxury end, Vivos Europa 1 offers architect-designed underground suites with amenities like private swimming pools. And a separate company, Oppidum, markets what it calls ultra-luxury fortified underground residences in Europe, with pricing ranging from tens of thousands of dollars for a small private suite up to hundreds of millions for a full underground compound complete with a garden, cinema, art gallery, gym, and staff quarters. This isn't just a fringe hobby for anonymous preppers anymore, either. It's reported that Meta co-founder Mark Zuckerberg is building a roughly 5,000 square foot underground bunker beneath his 1,400-acre compound on the Hawaiian island of Kauai, accessible via tunnels connecting two separate mansions, complete with its own food supplies, water tank, and pump system. Bill Gates has also been reported to have shelters beneath his properties in California and Washington. And just this year, a new ultra-high-end bunker complex in Virginia, reportedly valued around $300 to nearly $480 million, was unveiled by protective design specialists specifically targeting ultra-wealthy clients, expected to open sometime in 2026. Now here's the twist I mentioned in the hook, because this is where the story stops being about billionaires entirely. In Switzerland, underground shelter access isn't a luxury purchase. It's a legal right, and has been since a law was passed in 1963. As of late 2024, Switzerland announced plans to revamp its enormous existing network of underground shelters, roughly 360,000 of them nationwide, with enough combined capacity to house more than 9 million people, which is essentially the entire population of the country. Every Swiss citizen is legally entitled to underground shelter space. Finland takes a similar approach at the city level. Helsinki is often held up as the global gold standard for civil defense planning, with enormous underground spaces built not just as sealed just-in-case bunkers, but as dual-purpose infrastructure, parking garages, sports facilities, and public spaces during normal times that can be converted into functioning shelters within a short window if they're ever actually needed. This matters because it reframes the entire topic. What looks like a wealthy prepper's fantasy in Kansas or Virginia is, in Switzerland and Finland, just standard municipal infrastructure planning. Proof that build to survive the worst doesn't have to mean an isolated luxury purchase. It could just mean smart, boring, government-level engineering. So let's bring this back down to earth. Literally. Because obviously almost nobody watching this is buying a decommissioned missile silo. There's a real, accessible middle tier here that gets far less attention than the billionaire bunkers. In the Missouri Ozarks, for example, a custom-built underground bunker recently sold for $284,900 on 2.4 acres. A 1,250 square foot home with a full kitchen, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and additional outbuildings that could themselves be converted into extra shelter space, all sitting beneath an unassuming hillside. In Indiana, a converted Cold War-era bunker complex offers shared shelter space for up to 80 people at a dramatically lower individual cost than a private silo condo. These are genuinely attainable price points compared to a multi-million-dollar missile silo unit. But here's the more important point. You don't actually need an underground bunker at all to apply the same underlying principles to a small, resilient home. Every serious bunker on this list shares the same core design priorities, just executed at extreme scale, and every one of them scales down cleanly to a well-built tiny house or small off-grid home. Redundant water is priority 1. Whether that's survival condos, 75,000-gallon reserve, or a modest rainwater catchment and filtration setup on a tiny house roof. Exactly like we covered in a previous video about houses that make their own water. Redundant power matters just as much. Solar arrays paired with battery storage instead of a sole reliance on the grid. Food security scales down from hydroponic farms feeding 75 people to a well-stocked pantry and a small garden. Structural resilience scales down from nuclear blast-rated concrete to wind-rated, fire-resistant, well-anchored construction suited to your actual regional risk. Hurricanes, wildfire, or heavy snow load, whichever applies to where you live. And air filtration scales down from military-grade NBC systems to a solid HVAC setup with a good particulate filter, useful during wildfire smoke events that have become a real seasonal concern across much of the country in recent years. None of that requires $20 million or a former ICBM silo. It just requires designing intentionally, with the same underlying question the billionaires are asking. What happens to this home when the outside world can't help for a while? Now, because this channel doesn't sugarcoat things, it's worth including the pushback too, because not everyone views this industry favorably. Some academics studying doomsday culture have been openly skeptical of the entire bunker industry's marketing. One anthropology professor who spent years studying apocalyptic predictions put it bluntly: if you can make people afraid, you can sell them almost anything, bunkers included. It's a fair point. A huge amount of this industry's growth is driven by fear marketing as much as genuine risk assessment, and multi-million-dollar underground condos are, first and foremost, still a business. There's also a practical critique worth mentioning. A shelter is only as useful as the plan behind it. Several of these facilities include details like holding cells for unruly occupants or extensive security systems. A quiet acknowledgement that surviving a genuine crisis isn't just an engineering problem. It's a social and logistical one too. A resilient structure without a real plan for the people inside it, and the people who won't get in, isn't automatically a solution. So is any of this actually about surviving the end of the world? Or is it mostly about selling peace of mind to people who can afford it? Honestly, based on everything we just covered, it's genuinely both. And the two aren't as separate as they first appear. Larry Hall didn't just build a luxury condo. He took a Cold War weapon designed to end lives and turned it into something engineered specifically to protect them. Switzerland didn't build 360,000 shelters as a marketing stunt. It built them as basic public infrastructure most citizens will hopefully never need to use. And the same underlying principles, redundant water, redundant power, real food security, structural resilience matched to real regional risk, apply just as meaningfully to a small, thoughtfully built home as they do to a 15-story bunker 200 feet underground. You probably don't need a missile silo, but building a home that could genuinely take care of you and your family through a real emergency, without panic and without needing anyone else's help, that part isn't science fiction, and it isn't just for billionaires either. If this actually taught you something today, subscribe. We dig into home innovations and real builds like this every single week, and you don't want to miss the next one. And I want to know, if you had to pick just one feature from everything we covered today to add to your own home, the water reserve, the solar backup, or the reinforced structure, which one would you actually build first? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. See you in the next video.